Hello there. This is not going to be a one take. This is actually a retake. I wanted to come back and add some more to this video based on things that I learned yesterday. So this will be the most up-to-date information that you can have, and the update that I'm mentioning is regarding something John Barker announced yesterday. So wait to the end to see that. But for now, let's get started. As you can tell by the thumbnail, this is really about maximizing the input usage for the ATEM Extreme and ATEM Extreme ISO. And are 8 inputs enough? Maybe not. So here's something that you might see at an event, or if you're doing it in your house for, a panel that you're starting or whatever. There might be one speaker and then they want to bring a guest on with them, or a second host or whatever. So now you've got two inputs used for contributors, and you've got a third input used for that moving background that you're seeing. Also, it's a moving background for another show that I'm involved with, so sorry that the colors don't match my brand. I hope you'll excuse that, since I'm just trying to get this out so that you guys can see what's going on. So, okay, you're at 2 people, you've got 3 sources used. Now you want to go to a panel. And so for a panel, you actually have 4 people and you have the background. So you're up to 5 layers. Except for, in my experience, especially in live events, regardless of how many times you say you should not have more than 4 people on the stage, whether you're the the AV guy or you're helping plan the event, somehow you always end up with 6, right? And so with the ATEM Extreme, using the SuperSource and the 2 additional keys that can go on there, or 2 of the 3, here's what you end up with. You end up with something really nice. And I don't know if you noticed that, but it actually added a border around the additional boxes as all of the boxes slid over. And that's achieved using a hyperdeck. You can't actually do that inside of the Extreme by itself. You can move all of those boxes. You have enough, keys, and you can fly those boxes over, but you can't create borders around the last 2. So the trick is, and the way to get more color and more movement in your transition there, is to actually do that kind of in post or in pre, I guess, since you want it to be ready for your event. But if you plan that out, it's pretty easy. We'll go over how to do that too kind of quickly. But for now, let's go back to our 4 box, and here's what that looks like without the border. I like borders. I think it adds just a little bit of polish to what's going on in the shot, and it's pretty easy to do once you understand how all of this stuff works. But let me also say thanks to the guys at A to Z. Those first two transitions to the 2 box, then the 4 box, those are from their pack. They work pretty good. Like I said, I like borders, and I can definitely go back and add those to everything and load them all in the hyperdeck after. It'd just be a lot of work. There are 99 transitions for a reason. It's so that you can move in a certain order. So thinking through how you're going to get from one scene or one part of your event to another is pretty important. But now let's go back and let's look at that hyperdeck shot again. You can tell that my timing's probably a little off because I'm no graphics guy. There's a department for that for a reason. But so right now we're using 7 of our video sources, 6 for the people, and we're using 1 for the background. So we're also using one of our our downstream keys currently, and that's for the border. Once the hyperdeck gets to the end of that little stream, it stops, cuts off, but about 1 millisecond before, I have the DV or the downstream key 1 turn on with the media player with the same border that's in the last frame in that pool, so that I can then use the hyperdeck again. So in this case, let's use it for a logo. If you look that way. So you just saw DVE Store's logo. Thank you, Guy and the DVE team, for letting me use their animation so that I didn't have to create one for this. And please check them out if you are considering buying an Extreme ISO, ATEM Mini Pro ISO. Consider using my links. It would actually help this channel and me out so that I can keep making these videos and probably speed them up. But DVE has been great, and they offer great customer service. But enough about DVE. Here's what you're here for. let's get back to 4 box, and then let's change. Oh, before we change, I'm gonna get another me off of the other screen, so that you don't see two of me anymore. So now that it's just me and this, let's start talking about how you actually achieve that 6 box with the graphics and everything else, and why I think that 8 sources might not be quite enough. So if you look here, at some points we have all of the available keys on, turned on. And the reason why you don't have the fourth one on, that's getting used by the SuperSource. And so, as I understand it, and so that one's not available to you. But the others are on, and because we're using one of the downstream keys for our border, and then the other one at one point gets used for some of the other graphics. So you really do need all of those available to you. You can use them all pretty quickly. So when I had names up, that's kind of what that was. And actually, let's go back to that. Let's go back to 2 box, 4 box. So you have names, you have the four. So now you have both of your downstream keys are tied up. And once we add that logo over there, now everything is in use. All 8 of your inputs, both of your media pool options, so media 1 and media 2 are used. Absolutely everything that you have is used. One other thing that I want to mention now that we're back over here, if you look at this layout, I really like symmetry, so I moved everything to the middle, and that's really not the best call. If you were setting this up for an event, you'd probably want to move them to one side or to the other so that you can make those graphics or logos or whatever you need to display bigger. Because as you can see, DVE was the store, their logo was kind of small on the one side, and that's because I didn't leave enough space for it. But once we come back over here and look at how that all happens, you'll understand why I didn't go back after I realized that that I should have made more room and added a logo so that you could see everything in use at once. It was a mistake, but it's a lot of work to go back and change it the way that I'm going to show you. So now let's get to that. So if you look in the kind of right hand side of your ATEM software with the SuperSource, you'll see that there's a position. So you have an X and Y coordinate, you have your size, you have your crop. We only cropped left and right in the one that I did. You might actually want to consider, if you know how everyone is going to be framed, which is why technical rehearsals are so important to great events. You know the framing, you know where everyone's sitting, you know what their camera looks like. You know that if you go from, down to a 4:3 ratio, so kind of a boxy shape, that you're not going to cut off someone's chin when you add their name at the bottom or whatever the case may be. Lots of things happen, so knowing all of this in advance would be most useful, but you could actually free up some more space, but you would need to use the top and bottom crop to help achieve that, and you might end up adjusting your size so that you get more or less of the person. In this case, you can see that my shoulders are tight and just out of frame, and that's a pretty common thing to see when you have large groups of people, but think through that as you're building these out. So the reason why I'm bringing those aspects in the control box up now, or the box control, sorry, is because you want to know what your starting point and your ending point is. So you want to know, in my case, there was a 4 box. So I took the starting coordinates, the mask, the size of all 6 of the sources that were eventually going to come up in the 6 shot. And then I decided I moved them all into frame, and that's kind of a time-consuming task. John Barker's got something that'll help with that. But I positioned them kind of where I thought I wanted them, and then I took all of those coordinates so that I would have the starting and ending point. And once you have those, if you know, for instance, that you're on a 30 frames per second rate, you would divide by 15 to make things move kind of speedily along. And whatever that number is for each of those elements, once you take your starting point and your ending point, figure out what the difference is, divide by 15. Every frame or every other frame, that's what you're going to transition by. So you would do a frame for all 6 of your boxes, then you would add in pause, and then you would do it again and again and again, 15 times. So it takes some time to do it, and that's why I said I didn't go back and actually position things the way that I probably should have to show a bigger logo. But moving on, here is what you get. Once you get to that 6-box setup, the next step is to add those borders around each of the boxes. The way I did that, as you can see here, I actually shot some footage of the transition happening, and then I brought this isn't the actual footage, or the boxes aren't in there. This is a still shot. So I took a series of still shots for different points in those transitions, and then I simply came in, drew the boxes over it with the appropriate colors, and then I took out those still shots and put a green for chroma keying, and that's how we actually got what's on the hyperdeck to move and you be able to see everything, because you can't have an alpha channel in HDMI or SDI even. So what you need is you actually need 2 inputs to have done that properly with just alpha and not worry about the chroma and some of the things that come with that. You have to play with that a little bit, and you end up eating away a little at the edge of each box. So if you look at the boxes here, they're actually slightly larger than what you see in the video when I was playing it. So that is what I'm talking about right here, actually. So the hyperdeck is the source. It's using chroma key. So chroma for that one. For the DVE store logo, they actually have a white background, which is great. That meant I could just use the Luma key. Really simple, really straightforward. The hyperdeck became free after all of that transitioned and stopped, which meant I could then use the hyperdeck again to play their kind of bug animation over there. So next up, we spoke about this a little bit, but what you're going to do is you're going to want to transition off your hyperdeck and go to a still shot so that you can keep using that input. Otherwise, your input's tied up. But this brings up another problem. Really, to make more use of the ATEM Extreme, you might actually consider, I know I am, taking your hyperdeck and instead of plugging it directly into your Extreme, plugging it into an ATEM Mini, Mini Pro, Mini Pro ISO, whatever you have. You might push it in there and then push, say, another laptop, computer, whatever, that you want H2R graphics or some other source to come in for, because it's easy to put those name, title, graphics, whatever, when I'm sitting here playing with it now. But as we all know, when you're at a live event, someone doesn't show up, someone subs in, someone, whatever happens, you need to be able to change that. And if you don't have a team there who can help you do that on the fly, having something like H2R graphics and bringing that in is a much better choice. So just a thought, and a great reason why you might actually want more than 8 inputs, even in the Extreme. But it's just me. So if that seems a little daunting, or it made absolutely no sense how you get to those frames or whatever, there's some other options. One, let's talk about, Doug Johnson Productions. I think he's had macros for like 2 or 3 years that have been available to the public. So great job for Doug. Thank you for doing that for the community. His will require you to use an app. I don't use it, so I don't actually use Doug's in this case, so I can't say anything one way or the other, but they look slick, and he really thought those out. So maybe check his out. He actually updated them, I don't know, maybe a year ago. So I would definitely look at Doug's channel for that. I'll put a link in the description to his channel and to that particular video. The A to Z guys, obviously spoken about them on this channel before. Their packs work great. I used 2 of them earlier in this presentation. And finally, here's the big thing that I wanted to reshoot this for. H2R, so Here to Record, John Barker, is building a SuperSource builder. At the moment, I don't think it's going to, on launch, have those kind of transitions that I showed for the 6-box. I think that's probably potentially a feature down the road. All of it's about having time to do it, and let's face it, the guy has a life like the rest of us, and I'm sure he wants to do other things than just code. But he's done a great thing for the community by building this. I got to play with it a little. I'm not going to share the screen with you because I don't want to accidentally show the link, because it's still not even in beta. But it's a really great thing to have if you want to quickly at least figure out what your start and end points are. Even just using it for that and then building your own transitions out would be immensely useful. And I can see that happening pretty quickly. You would just add, pause one frame between each of the setups that you have. So that could work out pretty well. I will say the most beneficial bit of it all is that you can just copy the code that's down below what you can see here and then paste it into your own existing macros, which I absolutely love. And I would love to figure out how to do something similar for those frames, those boxes moving along. So if you could make the frames and the box borders and build out that video, or at least give someone the stills for that, I think that would be just a phenomenal thing for the community. But that's enough about that. I hope I generally explained how this all works. It's all based on your pauses and the number of frames that you have, both for building the movement and for building those boxes, those borders that you want to move at the same time. So with that, let's take one question, and then I have to reset this really quickly for an event that I'm about to run for a client. So this is one question that came in from the last video. He asked about my mic and my earpiece. I'll leave a description of those in the comments below as well. Or in the description, I'm sorry, not the comments. If you have other questions, please leave those in the comments. I'll gladly answer as many as I can. Also, like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. That would help the channel, and it would help more people find this video if you found it useful. And let me know what else you'd like to see. There have been a few questions about doing something like a behind the scenes, or explaining my setup, how I use it and why I use it. I'm still working on figuring out what I can and can't do. Most of my clients are actually covered by NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. So I have to think through what I can do so that I don't lose those clients, because I really like having money to buy this gear. So with that, have a great day. I hope this helped. Thanks again to DVE Store for loaning me your graphic. It's much appreciated, and I'll see you all soon.